Hey,
All right. Greetings. I am your host, Johannes Ice Quillitz, and welcome to Iceademia's Artist Spotlight. I am super excited for you guys to meet my first guest and super old school homie. He's just an amazing artist in every medium he touches, including illustration, graphic design, oil painting, graffiti, fashion, and for the last decade, sculpture in the form of denting aluminum cans. He possesses a keen sense of spatial awareness and executes his subject matter with laser-like precision, as if he has X-ray artistic vision. This is true. True story. His work has been exhibited all over the world, including the Ripley Museum here in the States, believe it or not, and across the internet in a series of clever viral videos. We originally met in 1988. Crazy. When I was learning to play bass in my first band, Al Kier, with his brother Sebastian. Shout out to Sebastian. I'm happy to introduce you guys to my good friend, Noah Deledda. Noah, welcome.
hey, thanks for having me.
Yes.
Happy to be here.
I'm happy to be here too.
You are since you mentioned how far back we go. You are actually quite a large influence on me as an artist. For your illustrations, your drawings, your art doodles. The first Al Kier album cover was one of my favorites. It was very inspiring. The technique of drawing large and then shrinking to maximize detail and crispness of line, that was a very influential idea early on for me. As well as musically, you're one of the most amazing musicians that I've had the pleasure to know as well. So it's quite an honor to talk with you now as artists. On an official platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I think I'm going to go freak out now. Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, let's talk about you though. I appreciate that. That is amazing. In fact, you just made my whole year, I think. Let's share your Instagram page real quick with people so they can get a quick peek at what you're doing or what you've been doing. I'm interested to find out what you are doing like right now, but let's just do that real quick. So let me see if I can make this happen.
If you want to share it.
I have it set up here, I think. So let's see. There we are. Do you see that?
Oh, yes.
So first thing I love about this, aside from the beautiful work that we're about to show you, you can kind of see it poking up from the bottom there, is your clarity statement, right? Redefining what the purpose of an overlooked object can be.
Yes.
I love that.
Thanks.
Especially in this world where we have so many throw-awayable things, right?
Yeah. So and that idea is to kind of draw focus to something that would normally not be paid attention to, and to point out importance or beauty. And when done so, I think that the contrast provides an extra impact to the viewer, because it's unexpected for something, not only the object to be ordinary, and it's something that maybe not typically associated with fine art, is the explanation behind the work that further explains that the technique itself is very simple and very ordinary. It's done by hand, and it's just denting. So not only is the object ordinary, but the method and the technique is ordinary. And through a process that we'll expand upon during our conversation, I'll explain. There's even some steps and guidance that can provide a path to discovery in that way, by embracing simplicity. And once simplicity is embraced, you come to the realization that simplicity is not synonymous with easy.
True.
It can take more time and effort to design something or develop something that's simple than it is to develop something that just works or that's beautiful. But I'm a proponent of embracing simplicity, because I think it has benefits throughout the process, and it comes through in the result.
Yeah, no doubt. It's amazing, really, to see. I mean, because when you're doing something that's complicated, it's almost like you can hide in the details of it, right? When you're simple, you're out there
Yeah,
exposed.
yeah, it's kind of laid bare. One example of that is, and the one thing about my art is and these ideas is that they're relatable to many different fields of study. So, like automobile design, for instance, and the engineering that goes into building an automobile, it's not necessarily the simplest one. Things are counterbalanced, and there's mechanisms to make up for, for cooling. That whereas a simple design, an automobile could be designed to where it doesn't naturally overheat. But since it's the way it's designed, it has to include a cooling system, or it has to include a counterbalancing system that offsets unwanted motion. Whereas if the design had been truly simple, that wouldn't have been needed. It's kind of a philosophy, and it's not always easily implemented or worth implementing. A lot of times you have to forego simplicity for function,
Right.
which is understandable, and that's why I express it through art, where it's not a crucial
No safety repercussions.
Yeah, there's no it's a little bit more lax, but as an idea, as a concept, I think it comes through pretty well through art.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Wow. So we were just looking at some amazing stuff there. Did I cut you off? Go ahead and finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
All right. So, I mean, it kind of blows my mind that you've achieved like this level of just beauty in your work, right? And how many patterns do you have? Do you know how many patterns you've done on the cans?
Well, I've officially produced, I'd say, between 30 and 40 distinct designs. But there's many more that I've discovered on a basic level, but I haven't developed all the way through. But that discovery is a driving force through the work. Discovering a new arrangement or a new pattern or possibility is one of the motivating factors, that, at least for me. And earlier on in the art, it was more regular. I would make more regular discoveries on a more regular basis. So those discoveries have become more sparse, but increasingly motivating when they do occur. So
right, because you want to keep motivated to like feel like this is what I'm still doing, because you can get kind of like you feel like, oh, okay, I exhausted this. Is that why you maybe went from one medium to the others in the past, or?
Well, and it's an interesting thing, was the transition from I was previously I considered myself a painter. I did oil paintings, and I had accidentally discovered this idea that denting a can could impart pattern and shape, and something interesting that exists within the cylinder of the can.
Right. And in 3 dimensions.
Yes. And though I'd had 3-dimensional art experience, it wasn't my focus, and especially not at the time. I actually had, while I was painting, I would take a break during the day, and I would drink an energy drink. We don't have to name any names. And I would
protect the innocent.
I would dent the can, and just for fun. It was almost kind of like a meditation, because it's something that it's an ambidextrous exercise. So using both hands creates like an immersive experience. So it became something that was relaxing and fun, and it started out very simple. But as it grew in complexity, I started sharing it more, and just with friends, and kind of at the bar, have a beer and dent it up and be like, hey, check this out. That went on for 8 years, until, and I feel a bit foolish, but because it took 8 years for me to have the idea to
do
dent
that.
a can. Well, no, to dent a can that had been that was blank, that didn't have any type of branding or logos associated with it, and that was a turning point. So I had a can, and I just roughly sanded it to remove the label, and I dented it. And the blank can really, it featured the design. The idea came across like crystal clear.
Right. What was the thing that brought you to that? Like, why did you sand that first can?
The idea kind of just, it was okay. I do remember what it was. Well, I'd been associated with Red Bull, and I'd actually won. They had an art competition that was called Art of Can, and this was in 2010.
Right.
And that led me to, it was the idea of possibly having a corporate sponsor or doing it in conjunction with a company and kind of having it be a thing started to become an idea. And although I had won the competition, which was encouraging that I was onto maybe something that was legitimate as a practice. And what the thing was, I posted it on Reddit.
Okay.
And
Never
I posted it at night, and the post didn't really take off very quickly. But by the morning, I noticed that my inbox was overloaded, and I checked the post, and although there was some people that were like, "Oh, this is cool," the first post was like, "Oh, nice try, Red Bull." Like people assumed it was like a Red Bull marketing initiative or something. And
right.
A lot of people, there's a large like anti-corporate community on Reddit, and so I was being accused of being a corporate shill and this and that. And of course I was. I would like to have been, because that would have been maybe they would be paying me or something, but that wasn't the case. So I deleted the post. I deleted my profile.
Oh gosh.
Created and I'm now operating under a different Reddit username, which I won't disclose. So just the idea of being associated with a brand became a bad thing. Like it was the brand was distracting from the art.
Right.
But it wasn't until 2012. So it wasn't until almost 2 years later that the idea to have a blank can came about. But it was in effect to try to distance myself from the brand, from any type of brand.
Right. It was almost like going through a breakup. Jeez.
Yeah. But it was instantaneous. There was such a definable turning point. When I dented the blank can, it all changed instantly. Within a week's time, I had kind of converted my art studio over to focus on that. So I was sanding and polishing and researching best practices there to create the surface. And it really there were so many things that seemed like it was just meant to be. Although it was stretched out over the course of 10 years, so many of the ideas, well, for one, like it brought me back. I just love shiny metal. It's just beautiful. Especially polished aluminum. There's something about it has like a pale, silvery color, and it's bright, but it has a dullness to it. It's like a subdued shine. But just shiny metal in general I've always been fascinated with. When I was a kid, I would take my Matchbox cars and rub them on the sidewalk until the metal was be scratched and shiny. And I thought that was better than the paint.
That's awesome.
So it was something that it reconnected me with this childhood fascination. It just seemed very meant to be. And there were a lot of other points during the process that gave me that feeling like this is what I should be doing. Like there was moments of intense inspiration, and so it was something I felt good about. And I basically, and as attached and to painting as I was, and as much as I love painting, I abandoned it. And there was I felt maybe even a bit strange about that, because it had been so important to me, and that all disappeared. And so I was I questioned that a little bit, but the fact that it happened that way led me to believe I was doing the right thing.
Well, and it's not like you don't know how to paint anymore, right?
Right. I could still paint, and I've done a couple of not painting is on the same level, but I've returned to it a couple of times. So
you could almost paint some of your cans too, right? And like crazy,
Yeah, that is one idea that I thought of. I've done a couple of pieces where I took a can and I sanded it blank, and then I painted it again. So I would create my own label on the can, which I thought was, it's kind of like circling back into it and creating something that's still ordinary, but it's new. For one, I painted a can to look like a Campbell's soup can.
Okay, I did see that. Yeah.
Which is a reference. It's an Andy Warhol reference, obviously.
Of course, yeah, right. That's cool.
But it's also something. There's some of the similar ideas. Is that this very ordinary object, and the design of the label itself was just so widely accepted, and it's something that fed America. And it was just this mass-produced thing to the point to where it became, kind of background noise,
almost invisible.
And that's one of the ideas that art touches on in a lot of ways, in a lot of other art. It touches on things that become, they kind of fall into the background, but not because they're not important or significant. It's just because they're so common.
And because they're so important and significant in a sense.
Yeah. So it's kind of a strange confluence of factors that creates that, which I find very interesting, and that speaks to human nature and how we treat objects and how we accept things to be normal, and when they really might not be. And I think Warhol did that with the Campbell's soup can. So I did that as kind of a reference, to his work. I did another piece that was it was painted to be like a Krylon spray paint can.
Oh, that wasn't a real Krylon can.
No, it was painted to be like one.
I'm like, how did you do that? Those things are really thick, man.
Well, I did also experiment with a Montana spray paint can, with an actual spray paint can. That was kind of a limited thing, but I painted an aluminum can to look like a Krylon can, because in the same way, it's a canned product that had such a profound effect on art.
Right.
In the early days of before it was called street art, it used to be called graffiti, and Krylon was the brand of this illegal art form, and in a way they embraced it and profited from it, but at the same time denying it. It kind of still, they never stood up for artists or
right.
or did anything like that. But so it was kind of this give and take thing but it was a very important canned item that influenced art greatly.
Hugely, yes.
Yeah. So I thought in that way, I thought it would be fun to tie that in as a concept. But even though I sanded the can blank and then painted this Krylon label on it, or the Campbell's Soup label on it, and then I removed it again. So it was the label was temporary in its existence. So it only existed for a short time and then was removed. But yeah, that was pretty fun. And I do have plans to do more to implement painting. I have the sketches done. I have the sketches done and I have a design that would feature a painting on the can that would look like like an ancient Greek wine vessel.
Ooh, with all those little
which. Yeah, it has the kind of the border across the top, and it has a figure of a woman playing a flute it's a flute that has three. It's like a triple flute kind of thing,
okay.
And it's actually derived from an artifact that I stumbled upon, not in the real world, cool. Online. But yeah, so and that kind of reflects on the historical use of containers, and how important just the container is. It's something that's like we just don't really like it,
the empty vessel.
Common. Yeah, and it's a very important thing. It's an important it's a metaphor for ourselves, the empty vessel,
Yes, right. And for life, the universe, and everything, vessel. Right? Yeah. The void. Well, we're getting deep today.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've been actually reading a lot about Taoism lately, and that's a thing, right? Like the empty vessel. And so, no, that's actually really profound. And I hadn't really thought about that. And so now I'm kind of like mind blown. If there's smoke coming out of my ears, that's what it is, people. Okay. Dang, man. There's so many directions I want to go with this. So here's one thought that popped up while you're talking. Last time we spoke, we went out to have a beer in Dunedin. And I remember we talked about giant robots.
Yes.
Remember that conversation?
Yeah, I do.
Is that still something in your mind? What's going on with the robots?
Yeah. So, if I were to, using the can and not really straying from that as a core concept, I think it's important to keep continuity. But one plan that I have that goes beyond the aluminum can is to execute these ideas on a large scale. And instead of using my hands, I would use giant robot hands, essentially. Yeah. All right. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and like an art mech.
Yeah. So it would be, the cylinder would be fabricated, say, 20 feet tall and, 10 feet around. And it would be, I would control giant robot hands to dent and form it. And it could be done as a performance piece, even.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
But I think that would be fun. And it's something that I've thrown out there around people that might be able to make it happen. And this, it could entail, it could be maybe a car manufacturer or a robotics company, or someone that has these capabilities that does, some type of artistic outreach. So yeah, that's
a big dream kind of one, right?
Like it's on the back burner for now, but yeah, I think that would be fun. I think it would be really fun.
I want to be there when that happens. Okay, so don't forget to invite me. Let's see. So let's talk about your journey as an artist. So going back a little ways, I mentioned we met in 1988. How old were you then?
I was 10 years old. Yeah, I was born in 78. So yeah.
10 years old. So at that time you were already an artist, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I was, because I would, since well, my first real solid memory that I have, and I think it was formed because I had made a connection. I kind of like I had a realization that kind of stuck with me as a memory. Was, I mean, it's probably, I don't remember the exact year, but it must have been, between 3 and 5 years old, when drawing stick figures was kind of a normal, acceptable thing.
Right.
At that age. I figured out that if you drew a stick figure and then you drew an outline around the stick figure, that it looked like an astronaut
in the spacesuit.
Yeah, in a spacesuit. And so it kind of grew from there, and it was something that, and like these ideas were something that I would kind of naturally form, but they lined up with like the instructions and art books and stuff that would kind of showed the process of drawing, of starting with a sketch and then going from there and building upon that. But so it was something that these were ideas that I kind of came to on my own, and so I was just I was very encouraged to kind of to keep drawing and exploring. But yeah, I was also encouraged by my friends and family, and inspired by friends of friends. Obviously you, like I'd mentioned with the drawing, which I was very inspiring. I had a friend whose older brother, his older brother's best friend was an artist, and he would draw comic books, and he was a very talented illustrator, and he had introduced me to animation and Japanime, which was anime. We used to call it Japanime.
Yep.
And that type of animation was just so clean, and it was so well done that it just set a bar. It was like, wow, this is humanly possible, and like I have to practice. And so it was inspiring and encouraging in that way. But I used to love drawing. I was very fascinated by cell animation, so drawing frame animations, like cartoons were obviously worked that way. So I thought that was, or the connection between drawing and moving images, I thought was very very interesting. And then through, I guess it probably started in my middle school years, I became fascinated with photorealism.
Right. No, I remember that.
The idea of being able to draw something that looked like a photograph, I thought that was just the pinnacle of artistic expression.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, and in a way it is. I don't say that to in a negative way.
No, but you can get carried away with that too, right? Not
yeah,
you, I mean artists, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. But looking back, I think realizing that you're on a path is good, because it's something that you don't necessarily realize at the time when you're on it. You kind of, when you're submerged in something, you tend not to see your past growth as an artist as a tool to extrapolate your future as an artist. So you're never as good as you're going to be. You're always going to have growth, and so accepting that it's a humbling thing. But I think it's something that not everyone experiences, but I think everyone should. But I think it was my last year in high school. I had so I would have been 18 years old at that time. I'd started a drawing, a pencil drawing that I worked on for 6 years. And so it was just, a black and white pencil drawing of a photograph.
Of your dad and your uncle, right?
Yeah, it was a family photograph of my dad and my uncle when they were kids.
Right.
And just the photograph itself had all of these qualities. It had like a stone texture that was interesting. It had a cloth pattern on the clothes that they were wearing that was very interesting.
I can see it in my mind. You don't have a picture of that, do you, somewhere?
I don't. I looked for one. I pictures and videos I can share, but they're all sculpture related. But I actually, when I finished the drawing, I gave it to my dad.
Yeah.
So I actually don't have the hard copy.
Maybe we'll get John Frankel to send us a picture one day.
Yeah,
I think people would really like that.
Yeah. But after spending so much time and effort on that one drawing, I kind of wandered off into painting and doing paintings that were more abstract and colorful, maybe a bit more impressionistic, just getting a little bit looser with image and not adhering to the strict confines of photorealism.
I like that you went in that direction. A lot of people like work their way up to photorealism and they're like, this is my jam. And you're like, yeah, okay, let's see what else.
But then, yeah, and there was, it was the contrast in that. So, I mean, it's not that I got sick of drawing photorealism, but it was like I had enough. And I think that I had achieved a work that was, it was important enough to me that I thought I could then move on to something new. And that's what happened. And there was some, we're going to call it street art now because I don't want to incriminate myself. But there was some street art that occurred in those years. And so that was for about a period of about 4 or 5 years. I was into street art.
Sorry.
And there's just some things,
there were rumors.
There's some limitations in street art that led me to make street art like paintings, but in a studio space on Masonite. And oddly enough, street art back then was illegal, but it wasn't its illegality that led me to do it privately. It was the community of artists, of other street artists, because there was a lot of like rivalry, and I'm not saying it was all like that. Conversely, I'll come back. I'll circle back. But it was kind of this rivalry mixed with the illegality of it that led me to go and do it privately in an art studio on Masonite. But there was a group of artists that were actually from the St. Pete, Tampa area that inspired me to do street art. And this was in 1996. So it was the year.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the year I graduated.
Okay.
And it was an artist, Tess One, Basque, and there was one other artist, but they had a group, a crew that they would go and paint. And there was called a legal wall, where it was a wall that was designated for street art. And I was out there, and I was kind of new to it. And I was just kind of painting an anime type of female figure. They were there at the wall, but they were very encouraging. They gave me tips. They actually gave me they make fat caps and thin caps that make different spray paint lines.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
What's that?
I was wondering about that. That's the thing?
Oh yeah. And back then they were hard to get. Like you had to order them through like mail-in catalogs and stuff.
Through Krylon's secret website. No.
Yeah.
Have a website, right? That was before the web, pretty much.
Yeah, but they were super cool and encouraging, and that inspired me into it. But then it was in part people that were a little bit more standoffish or rivalrous that kind of encouraged me to get out of it. And that happened in 2000. So I guess it spanned about 4 years that was on the streets.
So that was just before you moved to Tallahassee then, or was that around that time?
A lot of part of it happened in Tallahassee. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was in Tallahassee that I had started a screen printing company, and I had a warehouse space that allowed me to create art in my warehouse, basically. So I had a space that I could create on a large scale, and I could make a mess and And I developed some of these ideas with, color and shape that then led me into painting with oil, doing a more traditional oil painting technique. And that started in 2001 after it was after moving back to Tampa from and then I painted for about 14 years. I was very serious about painting, and then transitioned into sculpture. But looking back, it is a path. It's all discovery. It's all based on discovery, and being open to discovery I think is important, especially as an artist, because it's something. It's done out of love. It's not something that. It's not like a career path. It's not like, choosing your major in college. It's not something that you have a little bit more freedom. And so I think when you have the opportunity of freedom, and that it should be taken advantage of. But and diversity is also important, and trial and error is an important theme to my sculpture. So without trying different things, you don't really know what you truly connect with.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminded me of the picture of the can that we showed on Instagram, where it's kind of like tilted at the top.
Yeah.
And I read something about that somewhere. Can you tell us about that and what you were saying about that and how it?
Yeah. Well, like this piece here it's a failed attempt. And if I'm working on a piece and I make a mistake, I don't have to, because I proceed with caution and precision to create a piece, because there's really no room for error.
Right.
But if I do make an error, it gives me the opportunity to kind of freestyle, if you will.
Right.
And through freestyling and trial and error, 99% of the time, that's where new discoveries come from. And also, I practice with just ordinary cans. Like I'll just, I'll have, I drink water now. It's just mostly sparkling water.
Hardcore.
Yeah. And just kind of go at it just without even with nothing predetermined, just to kind of see what happens.
Right.
And I think that's an important element that leads to discovery. And through my art, like I said, I try to explain these ideas as they're relatable to other practices, or even try to describe it in terms of other artistic genres, if you will. Like with music, for example.
Okay.
Like I use and a lot of people will be doubtful that I do what I do by hand, because they're seeing the end result, and they'll think there's no way that you could have done that by hand. You must use a tool or something. Which is, I mean, it's kind of the desired effect. I'm trying to push it beyond what it would be thought of.
Right.
But it can be comparable to music. So, like, if you consider a thump, just the sound of a thump, it's not necessarily interesting. It's not necessarily beautiful. But when you repeat it and you alternate it, and you arrange it and compose it with thought behind it, it becomes something beautiful. It becomes something that makes you want to move and dance. And it's the same with a note. Like, you can play one note, and it's like, yeah, it's a horn honking is a note. Right. It's not beautiful, but when you repeat it and alternate it and combine them in series and in combination, you form chords. You form chord progressions. You know more about this than I do.
No, but you're right, though. It creates something bigger than the actual,
than the element,
the parts.
Yeah. And so that's an important idea throughout all types of art and creativity. and even through engineering or any practice that takes thought, planning, or even in math. There's through trial and error, you can establish an order of operations. So any design that I create, it has to be done in a certain order, and that order has to be determined. Mm-hmm. And so starting from scratch, not only is a design being created, but an order of operations is being created.
A process.
A process, exactly. And processes are important from manufacturing to practicing law. Like so this creative process is in everything in unexpected ways, and that's something that I like to point out. Like, for example, like, people don't think lawyers are creative. Sorry, my battery thing just beeped. I'll plug it in. But lawyers interpret the law, and interpretation is one of the main things that art does. It interprets and kind of reimagines anything, and it gives it back to us. So it's something that's it's something that's all around us in ways that aren't readily recognizable, and which ties back to the art itself. A lot of these themes are recursive. They occur on different levels at the same time. So which is also and that recursive themes, in my opinion, are indicative of something that is legitimate or interesting, when these ideas can like that same idea can be applied to different aspects of the work.